Today on the DNVR Rockies podcast, we are talking a little bit about the bullpen. We've got some Hall of Fame stuff to talk about, and we also want to break down some different perspective, give a little reality check on this upcoming season. That's coming up next on the DNVR Rockies podcast. What is up, everyone? Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast. Today is Monday, a beautiful Monday here in Colorado, and I'm excited to get things going this week because it's officially award week across Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball's award week begins this week. Tonight, starting with the announcement of Rookie of the Year candidates, which is going to be kind of exciting. We've got a couple good Rookie of the Year candidates to talk about today. But a lot of good stuff going on this week, and a lot of good stuff over the weekend as well. If you are not a big follower of DNVR, first of all, get on board. We've got a ton of awesome things that have been happening and are happening. If you don't know already, the Broncos are incredible. The Buffs are incredible. Sports is on fire right now in Colorado, and we love to be a part of it. So we're just excited to keep things rolling here this week. And look, I know it's tough for baseball because we're in the offseason right now, and we're not even in the fun part of the offseason yet, where like we're starting to preview this next year, and we're starting to look at like what's going to be the lineups that we're going to see for the Rockies. You know, we're talking about free agent signings. Like it's not even that part of the year yet. We're in this part of the season, or the offseason, I should say, where it's just like kind of trying to, I don't know, play what ifs in every way possible. And there's a time and place for it. And that's kind of what we're going to do today. But I just want to preface by saying, like, you know, I am right there with all of you guys as we get through this offseason. It's a grind. And I know, speaking from experience personally, that I am so ready to have baseball back on my television, in my radio, and just in my life again. So buckle up. You know, this is going to be a long offseason, but we're going to hopefully keep things going, keep the conversation going here at DNVR and with this Rockies podcast. But today we're going to start by talking about the bullpen, because I've talked a lot about the offense this offseason so far. We've talked about the offense, and I think coming into this offseason, it was an interesting storyline because the offense normally hasn't been as much of an issue for the Rockies as it was this last year. But for some reason, the Rockies seem to take a step back offensively, and not just a step back, but a jump, a leap backwards in the wrong direction offensively. So I spent a lot of the last month and a half, 2 months of the offseason talking about the offensive situation. So we're not going to spend really a lot of time today talking about that, but I want to spend time talking about the bullpen, because I've said also on this show plenty of times that I'm not as concerned about the bullpen as I am about the offense. But with that in mind, I still think that there is need for more depth in the bullpen than what we have right now. So I want to get into that today and talk about what that looks like for the Rockies. Is there a potential situation where the Rockies go into signing a veteran out of the bullpen? Do they keep with the youth movement and sign a young reliever? Do you go back and you sign someone who's already been a Rocky, bring them back? We're going to talk about that and break that down here to start off the show. But before we do that, I want to start by giving us a look at where we currently stand in our bullpen, because it's important to look at where the Rockies are right now as a team before we can look at where we want them to go. So in reflecting on where the Rockies are right now, it is no surprise that they are smack dab in the middle of this youth movement, as we like to call it. So you've got Angel Shiviji, Jeff Criswell, Seth Halverson, Jimmy Herget, who's not in the youth movement, but another addition to that Rockies bullpen, Jaden Hill, Tyler Kinley, Justin Lawrence, Anthony Molina, Luis Peralta, Victor Vodnik, guys that I would say at least pitched last year. Not that that's the encapsulating bullpen for the next year, but that's the guys that we saw throughout the majority of the bullpen last year. Now, what I think stands out to me most is that we have multiple guys on the roster that have closer ability, but the Rockies don't have a designated closer yet. So I do think that's something that we're going to start to see, whether that's something that they try to develop on the current bullpen roster as it stands right now. Do you put Seth Halverson in that spot? Do you put Victor Vodnik back in that spot as he kind of started to look like he was solidifying himself as the closer role? I don't know what that looks like. Or do you bring that new closer type pitcher in outside? So that's what stands out to me first and foremost. But I want to say, look, the bullpen is young. It's exciting. There's a lot of upside in what we can see in this bullpen. However, it's not stable yet. We haven't established ourselves as a bullpen, and there's a lot of room to grow. Yes, the young guys looked great, but they're returners for the Rockies. The guys like Justin Lawrence, Tyler Kinley, specifically, a couple guys like that, Anthony Molina even, who made his debut but pitched a lot longer throughout the season, than some of the other young guys who came on towards the end. They didn't really establish themselves as true dominant, middle inning / late inning relievers. And so I think when you're looking at what hole do the Rockies need to fill going into this offseason, it's got to be establishing a late inning reliever that you can lean on throughout an entire season. Not just a guy like Victor Vodnik, who was good in moments, but showed a lot of ups and downs, a lot of roller coaster type results. You need a guy who can come in and you can pretty much rely on is going to be your guy who can get you high leverage outs in late innings when you're playing tough games against very good NL West teams. That's kind of the type of guy that I'm looking for. And to put that into context, the Rockies bullpen, their team bullpen ERA was 5.49 combined throughout the season. That's the worst in the major leagues over the last 2 seasons, I should add. So despite all of the hope and anticipation for some of these young guys coming up next year, there still needs to be a lot of room for growth. So what do we do? What do the Rockies do this offseason when it comes to the bullpen? And I think the Rockies might surprise us. They've already signed one bullpen guy in Jimmy Herget, which I've talked about already on the show. But I do think that's not where the buck stops. I think the Rockies are going to make some more moves when it comes to bullpen pitchers. And I'm going to explain in just a moment and give you some options that the Rockies might look at. But I think where the Rockies need to set their sights on for this offseason is they need to attack an established reliever. I wouldn't go as far as to say a veteran reliever, although a lot of times when you get an established reliever, they tend to be veterans. But just like the Rockies, have shown that they like to pair a veteran catcher with a rookie pitcher. Jacob Stallings paired with, Jaden Hill out of the bullpen, or some of the younger pitchers. I think the Rockies have a lot of young guys in the bullpen that they need to balance out with some guys who have pitched in high leverage situations, guys who have pitched deeper into their career. Young guys can get you wins, but a lot of times when you have youth pitching, guys who aren't even really considered a rookie yet, haven't even hit that rookie threshold yet, when it comes to high leverage situations like Seth Halverson pitching in the 9th inning against the Dodgers and giving up back-to-back home runs to basically lose you that game, Jeff Criswell against the Yankees, like those kind of situations, that's where some of those young guys fall short because they don't have the confidence, the depth, the experience level at the big league level to get you deep into those games. Young guys can get you wins, but a lot of times when it matters most, they tend to fall back on their youth. So let's talk about who the Rockies realistically could go after this offseason. There's a couple relievers. And the interesting thing about relievers to me is that, the reliever spot overall is unique because you're not signing guys for a ton of money. It's almost like they've turned into like running backs in the NFL nowadays. Like, yeah, you get a couple good guys that are just like too good to not sign for a big contract, but they're so up and down. They fluctuate so much that they just don't warrant the huge contract that you see out of some of the other spots like starting pitchers or even closers sometimes that we see in certain situations. So who could the Rockies realistically go after? Well, I got to look at a guy like Paul Sewald, for example. between 2021 and 2023, Sewald was, one of the best relievers in all baseball. He had a 2.95 ERA over 189 innings pitched. He executes in big moments. He comes in high leverage situations. But, I think the downside for him over this last year is he missed some time with that neck injury. It cost him a little bit on the velocity side, and also it cost him a little bit on his breaking balls. So Sewald, it's kind of a matter of what he's going to be next year, but I like what he had to offer leading up to this point. His contract isn't going to be crazy either. You're looking at 2 years, $10 million roughly. The Rockies are in a position right now with their limited payroll that they're probably going to be cutting back a little bit. They're probably not going to be offering huge contracts. So I could actually see a world in which the Rockies offer a reliever a good amount of money because relievers aren't going to be going for an insane amount of money. You're not going to be seeing a $500 million deal for a reliever. The Rockies can't go out and sign Juan Soto, unfortunately. We're not offering $660 million, which apparently the Mets offered to Juan Soto. We're not doing that. So, for me, it makes more sense that if the Rockies could go attack a reliever and go get a guy who's worth 15, 20, maybe $30 million at most over a couple year stretch, that makes more sense to me. Paul Sewald, I think he could be a good shot. Blake Trinan, another name that came up, pitched for the Dodgers, obviously. He's been a good pitcher throughout his career. Here's the downside to Blake Trinan. He's 37 years old. It's one of those things where it's like, how much longer do you see a guy pitching when he's 38, 39, 40 years old? So the Rockies could possibly, if they wanted to go after Trinan, say, we're going to give you kind of a pillow deal for 1 year, kind of make you comfortable here in Colorado, help you out a little bit, and then send you on your way off into the distance. The issue is you're putting a lot on a guy who's max going to throw maybe a year, 2 years for your team. And that's assuming that he's even has the stuff that he had with the Dodgers last year. So I don't necessarily know if he's going to be a good fit or if he would be a good fit to Colorado, but he's an interesting name that's been thrown out there. Plus, I don't know if he really wants to come to Colorado. Like, you just won a World Series with the Dodgers. Do you want to make your name continue legacy-wise at Colorado? I don't know if Trinan wants to be that guy. So that'll be interesting. Kale, do you think?
Can I bring up some Rockies history here?
Yeah.
Because we've tried this several times in Rockies history, like spending big money on bullpen arms.
Yeah.
Not necessarily big money, but
big enough
money, trying to go the free agency veteran route. And it's been a disaster every time. My whole life. Like, they've never once signed a reliever who was good enough to justify the contract. Maybe outside of the first 2 years of Houston Street, where he was awesome.
Sure.
But, obviously you have the Albatross, which is the super bullpen that Jeff Bridich went out and spent $100 million on a bullpen when he had Nolan and DJ and all those guys trying to, give them enough support. And those guys just turned into complete nothing by the time, those seasons were over. So I don't want to see them go this route just because it's never worked. Like, pitching, like guys that have been, and we've seen it time and time again go the other direction too. Guys who are unplayable here go other places and thrive. Pitching at altitude for bullpen arms especially is really, really hard. And I also don't think we have to be honest with ourselves as Rockies fans, right? And know they're not gonna be competing for the playoffs next year. And so I would rather see them just even further. They've already done this, but even further, just really commit to the youth movement and try and see what they've got in these young guys, especially the guys that are coming up in the minors. Because when they have had success with relievers, the good relievers they've had over the years have all been internal development guys because they learn how to pitch at altitude.
Totally. I don't disagree with you at all. I think, for me, it's more of, I think the Rockies like to supplement, and they've done a good job, I would say, at adjusting and improving on their prior faults over the history of the Rockies. And I'm going to read some quotes in an article that just came out about the Rockies that I want to kind of react to after this break. But, the Rockies have made improvements to their approach to free agent signing, despite the Chris Bryant contract, despite all of the stains that Colorado has done. This last year, they've done a good job of really allowing guys the ability to grow and progress through their situation as a young, prospect in the Rockies organization. I just think there is a gap where you need some high leverage bullpen arm to at least be able to supplement some of these young guys who you just don't know what you're going to get yet.
Yeah, they'll make a move, right? And I'm totally okay with bringing a couple vets in. I just don't even to your point, like at $15 million, they're just in such a payroll problem right now, especially with the Bryant contracts. They're going to have to cut salary. They don't have a new TV deal yet. Like all of that, it's just like, I don't know. I would rather take a bet on a guy that's going to be a 1 or 2 year stopgap, and not have to spend $15 million.
Yeah. No, I again, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you at all. There's a couple other Rockies former Rockies pitchers out there, Tommy Kahnle, Adam Ottavino, that are on the market. So we got to take a break, but after the break, I do want to share another option that I wouldn't be shocked if we saw in a Rockies uniform, given the Rockies trends that we've seen over the years. But before we get into that, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Bet365, because at Bet365, we don't do ordinary. And Kale, you and I were talking before, little college basketball action's been happening. Your Drake Bulldogs back in action. My Gonzaga Bulldogs, the back in action. I've said it before. College basketball is my favorite sport to bet on. There's some incredible bets. Are you jumping into the sports betting world here?
I
know you do outside of that.
Very NBA focused on my betting right now, just because there's some inefficiencies in the market that they have not caught up on yet.
Okay. All right.
I'll turn on to college basketball betting wise, probably late December, early January, and really get into it. Once I find early season college basketball is tough to bet because you don't really know who any of these guys are yet. True.
A lot of young players too. A lot of young players. NIL / the transfer portal. All of that stuff is crazy in college sports. But my favorite. I definitely love betting on college basketball, and I use Bet365 whenever I make those bets, because Bet365 has so many cool options, and they also have some great deals when you open an account using Bet365 using code DNVR365. When you sign up, you deposit $10. You can choose between either a bet and get offer, placing a bet of $5 or more and getting $150 in bonus bets, or a first bet safety net offer by placing a bet of up to $1,000. And if your qualifying bet loses, you receive a matched refund in bonus bets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you're someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Also got to give a shout out to our friends over at Toyota, because Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR and the official vehicle of the Saez household as well. I am a lifelong Toyota owner. I've had my first car was a Toyota Camry. My current car is a Toyota Highlander, and it is still kicking right now. 250,000 miles, and we are rocking right now. I just took it. I had to do back-to-back trips out to Greeley this weekend. Did a little college football game. Called a college football game up in Greeley on Saturday, and then called a college basketball game on Sunday out in Greeley. So doing a lot of driving still on my very, very reliable and sturdy Zoe, as I like to call her, my nice Toyota Highlander, 2007. Still is an awesome car. But look, it's winter. It's cold. Tomorrow's supposed to be freezing cold, and we're getting into that time of year where it's important to have a car that can handle all of the things that the Colorado weather has in store for you. So there's no better place to go than Toyota. They have so many four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive vehicles that you can choose from, trucks, SUVs, so many different choices. The Tundra is one of my favorites. Toyota Tacoma. My mom has the Tacoma. But whatever you're into, Toyota has you covered. So visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial. Corwin Toyota in Boulder. Groove Toyota in Littleton. Mountain States Toyota in Denver. Stevenson's Toyota East in Aurora. And Stevenson's Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR. All right, back here on the DNVR Rockies podcast, I want to circle back to the conversation I was having before this about the situation that the Rockies are currently in right now in the bullpen. And, I think we're talking about, okay, would they want to spend $10 million, $15 million on a pitcher that's going to come out of the bullpen? I agree with Kale's point about, I personally don't think they need to go break the bank here. However, just knowing the Rockies' history, it's been something that they've gone after. And I do see a world in which the Rockies say, you know what, we have a lot of young guys that are very good or could be very good, but we need to build onto that a little bit more. I could see a world in which they spend more money than we're expecting them to in this offseason on relievers. And one of the names that comes up to me is a Yankee in Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes was a pretty good reliever, late inning reliever. He's a hard throwing bullpen guy with a solid sinker, good sweeper. He is one of the best relievers, I would say, on the market this offseason. His walk rate was a little bit high, which is, I think, why the Yankees ended up kind of shifting his role into more of a hybrid role for them this last season. But I think the reason he could be a really good fit for the Rockies is he gets a lot of ground balls, almost a 70% ground ball rate that he throws out there, which would definitely translate at Coors Field. And he's a guy who's had experience pitching in high leverage situations, not only pitching for the Yankees, but pitching in situations where, you have to kind of, I almost think of it like we're comparing, the Nuggets, like, when, or the NBA in general, like, being a guy who can go out there and hit free throws when the game is on the line. Yeah, guys can hit free throws when you're shooting in warm-ups or whatever, but like go out there and do that when the game is on the line. It's a totally different vibe. And that's something where I'm concerned about with this Rockies youth movement, where you've got a lot of pitchers who, yes, are really good, have a lot of high upside, but do I trust them to come in and get 3 straight outs against the Dodgers in a series-deciding game late in the season? And I'm not going to say that the Rockies are going to be competing for a playoffs, but if you're looking long-term, you got to have some guys that can pitch in those high-leverage situations. So Clay Holmes is a guy that I think could possibly fill that role for the Rockies. However, Cale's going to love this. He's looking at a roughly 2 years, $33 million contract. So I don't know if the Rockies are willing to spend that much money. However, I do see if there's going to be a position that we get surprised at this year for the Rockies, based on the history that we've seen out of the Rockies, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a surprise in the bullpen.
I mean, I'll never be surprised by them making a free agent signing because I went on record and said there's no way in hell Chris Bryant's going to be a Rocky, and here we are.
We are.
I'll never be surprised. I don't know. I get what you're saying, and he actually would be one of the ones I wouldn't be too bad for because I think there's probably a lot of life left in his arm, which is good. But man,
yeah.
I just
not a fan of the $30 million paycheck.
It's a lot of money, and like I've just seen it over and over again. My whole life, they pay money to these guys, and they come in, and they're just not the same pitchers in Denver, and that's just what it is.
It's so interesting. I never got the chance to pitch. Well, that's actually not true at all. I did pitch in Colorado. I pitched in Gunnison, Colorado, one of the highest places in the country to pitch in. But from my perspective, when I was playing college, doing a little college ball up in Gunnison, Grand Junction, that area, I didn't notice much of a difference in my pitching from when I threw the majority of my career in Seattle versus coming to Colorado. I think it's more so just because I relied a lot more on my fastball than I did, some of my other pitches. And so, there are a lot of pitchers, especially in the big leagues, where they rely more on their off-speed pitches, which, historically, obviously don't break in the same ways. But, I don't know. It's just, I just think given the history of the Rockies, I could see them doing something, surprising in the bullpen because of how much Bud Black, Bill Schmidt, Dick Mumford, the guys who make the decisions like to have that veteran/rookie pairings. And right now, your veterans in the bullpen, Tyler Kinley, as of now, Justin Lawrence, Jimmy Herget, they're not guys. I mean, yes, they're veterans, but they're not guys that you're going to rely on to like lead your bullpen.
I'm not counting on Justin Lawrence to be a mentor, nor do I think I would want him to be.
I don't even know if he's going to be a Rocky this year, So, yeah, the Rockies, that's all up in the air. But just wanted to talk a little bullpen here. I want to transition, though, and talk a little bit about an outside perspective, because I think it's important that we, as Rockies fans, especially us that cover the Rockies, it can be easy for us to be eternal optimists. And I know there are a lot of, people who cover the Rockies that are the opposite of that. And they say the Rockies will never be good again. And that's fine. There's a market for, those kind of takes as well. At DNVR, we tend to push more along the lines of, hey, like, we're here because we love baseball. Like, we want the Rockies to be good. We're going to push for them to be good. And so we are going to communicate with you as the fan the ways in which the Rockies are going to be good next year. That is that I believe is my responsibility, is to, yes, recognize when things aren't good, but also kind of give us a chance to see where we could possibly be in a room to grow next year. However, with that in mind, I do think it's important to see outside perspectives from time to time to give us a little bit of a balance, especially from good baseball minds. And so we saw the Zips Fangraph breakdown come out over the last few days, and I had a chance to kind of read through what the Zips Fangraph, they go through the rankings of all the teams, and they kind of rate all the teams, and they go through the offense, defense, all of that kind of stuff, and they give you a breakdown on more of just the stats. Like, they're not talking opinions. They're not talking about like, oh, I like this player. They're talking about just the actual stats of each team and where that can lead each team throughout their season. So I think it's a really good base level evaluation tool for us to look at for the Rockies. So I went through their article that was basically breaking down all of their different stats and all of their different evaluations. And so I want to read some of this commentary that they have, starting with their commentary on the batters, and then we'll react to that. And I want to see if you guys agree with this. Kale, I'll throw this out to you too. Like, I want to see if we agree with this, with their takes on this, if it kind of stirs something up in us, or if we disagree. So I'll start with their commentary on batters here to start things off. They said, quote, "Are the Rockies a good team? No, they are not. Are the Rockies even a middling team? Again, no." Tough start there for us. But things may slowly be getting better. Colorado will still have a lousy offense in 2025, but you can at least see the light at the end of a very long tunnel, most obviously when looking at this new lineup. So I think the important thing to look at for that commentary is, I think we can sometimes feel like we have these young players that, like, yes, like we feel really good about the Rockies and some of their young guys, and that's all great. However, when you look at what the Rockies did offensively last year and the year before that, I think it's safe to say that they're right. Like, the Rockies aren't a good offensive team. Now they are getting better, and there's a world in which they can be good, which they said. There is a light at the end of this very long tunnel. But what is it going to take to get us to that spot? What is it going to take for the Rockies to get back to a place where our offense can be a part of the team that we don't really have to worry too much about? And, so I just think that's interesting. Steve G makes an interesting point in the Toyota chat. When the top teams are spending $100 million or more, the Rockies, we won't even be a contender. I'd like to push back on that a little bit. I agree with you to a point. Yes, it's hard to compete against the Dodgers when they're spending $1 billion. It's hard to compete against the Mets, the Yankees, even the Phillies, or hell, the Rays even being a team that spends. However, the Rockies aren't a team that doesn't spend. And actually, this Fangraphs article acknowledges that. The Rockies spend money. They're just historically bad at spending money in the right places. They spend it in the wrong places. So when you're looking at if the Rockies can be competitive, I don't necessarily know if them not spending $100 million in the offseason, I don't think that's their issue. And I don't think that's going to be what makes them not be contenders. I think their bad spending habits from years prior are going to be what keeps us from being contenders over the next few years. You've got a looming Chris Bryant contract. You've got a bunch of just, kind of bad deals. You're kind of trying to just get off the books, and you're trying to build from scratch, which is why I feel like there's room for growth. However, there's a long way before we get to that. I want to wrap up this commentary on the batters, though. Continuing the commentary here for the Zips Fangraph article. They said, quote, "If these projections are accurate, there is still an awful lot to do to turn a better process into better results. It takes a lot of time to restore that 79 Corvette that's been rusting in your garage for 25 years. But Tovar, Doyle, and Jones, the last of whom is a great bounce-back candidate after a season ruined by injury, are a good start. And there are actually players here who you could see contributing to the team 3 or 4 years down the road. Yes, amen to that paragraph right there, because I have bet my career on the fact that the Rockies starting 5 offensively has the potential to be one of the most competitive starting 5s in baseball if they are achieving the results that I know that they can achieve. If Nolan Jones gets back to his rookie Nolan Jones, where he had a chance to win Rookie of the Year, he is going to be an insane asset, probably an all-star, if he can get back to where he was his freshman year for the Rockies. Brenton Doyle, will be an all-star next year if he stays healthy and continues to play the way he finished out his year. Ezequiel Tovar, same thing. Ryan McMahon, he's got to get back on the horse offensively, but he's another guy that can be one of those guys. And Michael Toglia, a great defensive glove who could possibly win a Gold Glove. And also, if his bat continues to grow, he's another guy that can be a great offensive piece for the Colorado Rockies. I am feeling good about where the Rockies are offensively based on those 5 guys alone. And Fangraphs they agree in that exact same spot. So to wrap up the batter's commentary, they wrap up by saying, it had to happen eventually. Rockies ownership isn't cheap like John Fisher, and it does care about the team. Interesting point there. It's just that the organization's way of thinking has led to it dropping about $500 million on free agent signings over the last decade, including Chris Bryant, and that brought just about nothing to the team. Interesting point there, and I want to respond to that after this break, but we do have to hit a break here. So I will respond to that after we hit this break. But real quick, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Coors Light, because Coors Light is the most refreshing light beer out there on the market. If you like light beer, if you like beer in general, Coors Light is a great light beer. I started drinking Coors Light when I was going out to our college bar in Gunnison, and I haven't looked back. It is truly one of my favorites. I don't know if it's the vibes, Colorado synonymous with Coors, or if it's just the fact that it's just an incredible light beer. The taste is great. There's, everything about it, the can, the design. I was actually out in Golden the other day. I have yet to tour the Coors Brewing brewery, but that is on my bucket list here in Colorado. So you got to check that out if you're out in Golden, Colorado. But there are plenty of chances in life to make things better when you choose to chill. Embrace that chill mindset. Make the most out of those times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instant Cart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company in Golden, Colorado. Also got to give some love over to our Shady Rays friends, because Shady Rays is the best when it comes to sunglasses. And I know it's getting dark at like 2 p.m. nowadays. I know it's cold and it's winter, but as I so brutally learned after moving from Seattle to Colorado, the winters in Colorado are even sunnier in some ways than the summers are. And you actually need to wear sunglasses more in the winter than you do in summer. And I didn't know that was even a thing until I stepped foot outside in the middle of January one day, and there was snow everywhere, and it was blindingly sunny, and I burned my retinas because it was so bright. That reflecting sun off of the snow is pretty rough. So don't make the mistake that I made. Get some Shady Rays. They will keep your eyes protected, and also they look good, and they're affordable. There's really no other reason I need to give to you for you guys to go and pick up some Shady Rays. They are truly the best when it comes to sunglasses. There's a reason that they are the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. And right now, exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deals of the season, maybe even of the holiday season as we get closer to that. Head to ShadyRays.com and use code DNVR for 35% off all polarized sunglasses. Try out those shades, rated 5 stars or more by over 300,000 people. All right, back on the DNVR Rockies podcast. Want to go back and read this last paragraph and respond to this from this Fangraphs reaction article that they put out as they were ranking / giving a little highlight to this Rockies season. They said, quote, I mean, it had to happen eventually. Rockies ownership isn't cheap like John Fisher, and it does care about the team. It's just that the organization's way of thinking has led to it dropping about $500 million on free agent signings over the last decade, including Bryant. That brought just about nothing to the team, end quote. Here's where I respond to Steve, who was in the Toyota chat earlier. The Rockies do spend money. They just spend it in the wrong ways. And that's the issue for the Rockies. So, you know what? I think they have turned a corner in recognizing, and I think this Chris Bryant contract was a very rude and unfortunate awakening for the Colorado Rockies, because I think it showed the organization that, like, you know what? Finally, we're starting to realize what we've been doing isn't working. The way we've been approaching spending money, approaching this offseason, it's not working. So we have to make some different changes. And I will still die by this belief that if I sat down here with Dick Monfort and I wrapped him up in a polygraph test and I said, on record, Dick and Bill, do you care about winning at Colorado? They would say yes. And that lie detector test would say that's true. I guarantee you they care about winning, even if it's just from a business standpoint. You make more money if you're winning. The issue is they just have been really stubborn in the way they've gone about it. So Fangraph's this reaction to this article that they put out, I think is showing what I already know and what I already believe, but it's giving an outside perspective on that and saying, you know what? We see it. The Rockies want to win. It's just, are they able to kind of get out of their own way and make that happen? So let's shift our focus onto the commentary on pitchers, because they had a good breakdown on some of the pitching that the Rockies are at right now. So let's dive into it. They said, quote, while the Rockies have found a few cornerstone offensive talents, the pitching isn't there yet. I believe, but do not have an easy way to check, that this is the first team rundown I've done in all the years that doesn't have a single pitcher with a median projected ERA of at least 100. Now, the reason because of that, outside of the fact that the Rockies do have some below average pitchers still on the roster, I won't name names, but you know who they are. I think a lot of the reason for that is the fact that the Rockies just have a lot of young guys. Like, we don't know what we're going to get out of Seth Halverson. We don't know what we're going to get out of Anthony Molina, right? Like, that's kind of where I think this is going for, is that we just don't know what we're going to get in that position. So that's kind of where they're coming from with that. Continuing on in their article, they said, but weirdly enough, it's not quite as bad as it sounds. All right, silver lining. While no one has crested a 100 ERA plus, the Rockies still have a lot of hurlers in the 90s, meaning that they at least have a good selection of better than replacement options, which is something. Before blowing out his elbow, German Marquez was a terrific pitcher, and both Antonio Senzatella and Kyle Freeland have had their moments. Zip sees a lot of paths for Chase Dollander to break out, and it has some interest in the fringier prospects like Carson Palmquist, Sean Sullivan as well. It won't be a good rotation, but like the lineup, there are reasons to think that they might be at least less depressing than the last few years. We'll take that. I'll take less depressing. You know, I don't expect the Rockies to be a World Series team, but I'll take less depressing next year. If we're a team that can be fighting for 500, if I can put out a road to 500 graphic in September, I'm happy with that, right? Like, I mean, let's take the little victories. No one here is saying that the Rockies are going to outright win the NL West. That's not going to happen. Are they going to make a wild card? That would be a miracle. Like, best case scenario, Rockies are in contention for a wild card next year. That's best case scenario. Realistically, if we can hit 500 and maybe be not in last place in the NL West, that's a good season to me. That is a great season, especially given what the Giants are doing this offseason and where I think they're going to be as a better team next year. So I do think the Rockies are moving forward. And Zips Fangraphs, Zips is acknowledging that the Rockies are improving. They are moving forward in this. And to respond to Steve in the Toyota chat, where his last comment says, Rockies are about the middle of the road in salaries, but only the top 5 teams win the World Series. I would disagree with you on that. Yes, on paper, yes, the Dodgers, Yankees, Mets, they were all those teams in the end that were fighting for it. But the Guardians, one of the lowest salary or lowest, payrolls in all baseball. They were in that Final Four there, and then look back last year, the Rangers, the Diamondbacks, they were in the World Series last year, kind of out of nowhere. Baseball's tricky, and it's not as linear. And I've said it before. Baseball isn't as linear as other sports where you can have a super team like the Dodgers, and they might not win the World Series. So it's an interesting thing. Kale, did you have something to say about that?
I was just going to say, I think you can absolutely spend your way to regular season success in baseball. I don't think it always, actually, statistically, just does not always translate to postseason success. It's almost an entirely different thing. Baseball has had a different World Series winner, 8 out of the last 10 years or something?
Yeah.
So
I get what you're saying.
These are middle payroll teams. So, you can buy regular season success and you can buy yourself a ticket to the dance. I totally understand that, but you're not going to win that dance.
And Steve, look, here's my overall take to that too. If the Dodgers go out and win the next 4 World Series, even if they take 4 out of 5 World Series in the next 5 years, then you know what? I'm going to start to start agree with you. I'm going to start agreeing with you more. I just think, like Kale said, baseball is so dynamic that yes, it gives you a head start. If you're the Dodgers and you're going up trying to get Corbin Burns and, the Saki character from Japan and, all of these, Juan Soto, like all of these huge free agents, like that helps. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to say the Rockies could do that. However, baseball is the ultimate equalizer as a sport. It's not basketball like where the Golden State Warriors, you had the five best starters in basketball during that era, and they won, a million NBA championships. Like, baseball is just too different. It's too reliant on pitcher versus hitter dynamics and even good kind of nobodies like we've seen from the A's over the last few years when they've snuck into a playoff spot here and there as a team that was a nobody. It's just too unique of a sport. But going back to the whole pitching situation for the Rockies, I do think the Rockies, although Zips, I can't disagree with them. The pitching staff isn't great. It's getting better. And give it 2 years, maybe the Rockies bullpen can be a homegrown, competitive bullpen. I don't see that being, an outlandish take. I think we could see a world in which that happens. So to finish up their commentary on pitchers, they said, quote, "A few seasons down the line, the Rockies might just find that they built a credible bullpen from scratch." Hey, that's what I just said. It'd be a welcome departure from their usual approach of chucking money at any reliever with a recognizable name who has a good 3 years or who was good 3 years ago, end quote. So yeah, Zip's pretty much in line with what both Kale and I were saying there. Rockies have just a history of throwing money at people and, hoping that it sticks. So their overall roundabout, wrapping up of their ratings of the Rockies was saying, quote, "The Rockies are very likely to finish in last place in the NL West again, no surprise, but it wouldn't be crazy to see the team approach 70 wins. Hey, sometimes the arrow of time doesn't move that quickly." That's, I guess, where I think that's the hardest pill to swallow for Rockies fans, myself included. We want success tomorrow. Baseball is a long sport, and 162 games is a long grind of a season. And it sucks when you sit there as an organization, and if I had a crystal ball and said, Rockies fans, the Rockies will not make the playoffs again for 4 years. But in 4 years, they will make the playoffs, and they will get into the second round of the playoffs. But you got 4 years till you get there. Even if I was to tell you that I could see the future and you were guaranteed a playoff appearance in 4 years, but you had to get through 4 years of growing your team before you get there, that would still kind of suck to hear, right? Like, that's like the thought of how long 4 years is. And again, I'm speaking hypothetically here, but like even just 2 years, when we're talking about a potential to have a 2026 competitive team, that's their goal, is to be competitive by 2026. Well, that's 2 years away. How much is going to change over the next 2 years? How many off seasons, how long is our off season going to be over the next 2 years? How many times am I going to sit here over the next 2 years telling you over and over the same storylines? I think that's the pill that's hard to swallow for Rockies fans, and myself included, is that in baseball, it's not always that simple. It's not always the case where we just, all of a sudden the Rangers just kind of like throw together a hodgepodge, mix of veterans and end up winning a World Series. That's not always the case. Or the Royals get, one of the best young players in baseball and Bobby Witt Jr. and all of a sudden they're a playoff team. It doesn't work that quickly usually. So I just want to be realistic in how we approach this upcoming year. And if the Rockies can win 70 games next year, what did they go, 101 or what was it, 102 losses this year? Was that what it was? Or 101 losses this year, I think it was. Better than their 103 losses the year prior to that. Again, if we can be fighting for 500 by the end of the year and maybe even a chance to not finish last in the NL West, that's a step in the right direction for me. That is a step in the right direction. All right, got to take a break, our last break of the show here, and give some love to our friends over at Breck Distillery, because if you like bourbon like I do, I actually just whipped up my favorite pre-prepped batch of beeswax infused old fashioned. I know it sounds weird, but it's actually really, really good. Use some Breck Distillery bourbon for that, and it is so good. So good. I've got a huge jug of long-lasting, pre-mixed old-fashioned that I pre-batched already out. Breck Distillery bourbon, old-fashioned, in my fridge, and it's something I do every fall because I don't tend to drink a lot of old-fashions during the summer. It's just not my drink. I'm more of a mojito guy in the summer. Got to get a little fruity there, a little light and luxurious, but bring on the cold weather, and I'm old fashions all day. And Breck Distillery is the best bourbon whiskey that I have tried here in Colorado. It is truly the best, especially for the price you're getting it at. It's high quality, high tier bourbon whiskey. And if you were at the Broncos tailgate, the DNVR tailgate over the weekend. And I say over the weekend, it was like hours ago, literally. I think the party was still happening well into the night after that Broncos game. They had some Breck Distillery bourbon out there. Kale, did you hop on the Breck Distillery train while you were there, or were you all business?
Well, I had shows to run and had to come back here and do three shows.
I know, we're
Nuggets,
big time now.
So
we have to be serious.
I wish I could have partaken. I love Breck Distillery, but I had to be smart and responsible for my job.
Good for you. We appreciate that. What a blast that was. But Breck Distillery, they are award-winning spirits, and they are truly the best at what they do. So right now, speaking of the Broncos, you can enter to win 2 tickets to a Denver Broncos game in the Breckenridge Bourbon Whiskey Suite. Share how you celebrate the Broncos by posting your photos to social media using hashtag Broncos Bourbon. Also, use promo code DNVR at checkout for free shipping on all orders over $99. Learn more at BreckenridgeDistillery.com. All right, got to give some love to our events because events are popping off right now. If you're not following us on social media, first of all, follow the podcast on social media. Follow DNVR Sports on social media. It is absolutely insane what the DNVR Broncos team is doing right now. Not only the Broncos are being awesome and winning, and we got an MVP quarterback and a potential rookie of the year, and like the Broncos are just crushing it. Going to talk a little more about that on TDSP tomorrow, but our tailgates are better than they've ever been. Kale, you were there at the tailgate. Talk to me about the vibes because there's another tailgate coming up on December 2nd. What are the people going to see when they go to a DNVR Broncos tailgate?
Yesterday was the most lit tailgate we've ever had, like by far. We have like live DJs we contract with. You've got Toyota there giving out swag. You've got unlimited food and Breck brews. You've got Breck Distillery there. We've got beer pong, we have cornhole, anything you could ever want at a tailgate.
Sad Atlanta Falcons fans,
and it's full of Denver sports diehards and your favorite DNVR personalities. It's the best place to be in town.
It really is. I'm so bummed I didn't get to go. I had to, like I said, I had to do some college basketball yesterday, so I was not able to get to the tailgate. But December 2nd, 3 to 6 p.m., I will be there. You can find out more information on thednvr.com/events. That is going to be an absolute blast. But all right, circling back here on the DNVR Rockies podcast, wrapping things up, final 10 minutes of the show here. I want to share with you just real quick, got some photos. The Rays, who have announced that they're going to be playing their games this season at Steinbrenner Field. The Rockies will open up their season at Steinbrenner Field in Tampa. But this is some of the photos. They finally released these photos of Tropicana Field. That's insane. Like what the damage that did. Just look at the. Oh, I didn't even see they had a thread of this. Wow. Thank you, Kale, for scrolling down. This is new to me. Like I think the water damage though, if you scroll up. The water damage in that bottom lower third left hand photo of the like water damage of the ceiling, like that's, as someone who, I've never had like water damage of a house of my own, but I know people who have. My aunt and uncle have a beach property in Seattle, and they actually had a high tide that flooded the house. And I know, like, just in talking to them, they were saying that that's some of the worst things that you can ever have happen to a home. Like that looks awful. That looks awful. I don't know when Tropicana Field is ever going to be able to host games again. I know they're in the process of getting a new field, a new stadium basically redone. But from some of the research I was doing, I don't think that deal hasn't gone through yet. They don't have a stadium that they're ready to play at over the next 2 years at least. So the Rays are in a tough spot. Steinbrenner Field, where they're going to be playing their stadium games at, is 11,000 person capacity, which, again, I said this on Friday, they only average 16,000 fans per game. So maybe you're filling seats at this point, still playing in Tampa. But, our hearts go out to the people that are out there in Tampa, just having to deal with all of that. That's crazy to see those photos. Also, speaking of stadiums, the Astros just announced today that they are changing their naming rights to Minute Maid Park. They're now going to be named, going to probably mispronounce this, Dakin Field, Daikin. I'm going to go with Dakin Park, which I don't know what that's in connection to. I don't know if that's a business, an organization. Maybe I'm missing something there, or maybe it's a name of, a big donor or something like that. I don't know. It's not really as common in professional sports as you see like in colleges and stuff, but that's a weird one. Minute Maid Park, like, it's always been, it's got to be the juice box to me. Like that's weird to me. I hate this kind of stuff. I know it's the business of baseball, of sports. We see it all the time, but I hate when stadiums change their names after you've grown up like knowing that stadium. And it reminds me, and it was something that I actually discovered for the first time when I was doing this show with Kale months ago, that Coors Field has a lifetime agreement, or Coors has a lifetime agreement with the Rockies to own the naming rights forever for the Colorado Rockies. So it will always be Coors Field. And how blessed are we that is the case? Because we don't have to have some weird company come in and be like, all right, it's now State Farm Stadium instead of Coors Field. We don't have to deal with any of that here, which is really nice. But it brings up the question, what's the worst name change that you've had in your memory for a stadium? I'll ask you, Kale. Is there one that stands out to you where you were like, I only know this stadium as this name, not their new name?
I mean, everything that's not Mile High for me, because it's just like it'll always be Mile High. Yeah. And Sports Authority Field was the worst because it didn't flow off the tongue at all. Empower, at least, like, you can just say Empower, you know. Same with Invesco, but like it's just always going to be Mile High. There will never be anything that's not Mile High. I
agree. Pepsi Center was a weird one for me. Granted, I can't, I moved into Colorado in 2015. So I only had a few years with Pepsi, but that one felt weird when it changed to Ball. I like Ball Arena as a name. If it had been Ball Arena forever, it would have been more of a thing for me where I'm like, oh, that's a cool name. I just think like it's still, I get caught up sometimes wanting to be like, oh, we're going to the Pepsi Center. It's like that feels like a habit to me.
Yeah, it was Pepsi my whole life. And we I grew up, my dad had season Avs tickets. So like I would definitely Pepsi was a huge part of my childhood. Yeah. But I don't know, Ball also flows off the tongue. And like the fact that it's a basketball stadium, it kind of works.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I mean, this one's going back to my childhood because I grew up in Seattle. Mariners Stadium was always Safeco Field and then changed to T-Mobile. And I hated that, first of all, because they changed everything to magenta. Like the whole stadium, like all their accents are now magenta, which is just awful to me. After it was, everything was all dark blue and yellow and it fit the vibe for the Mariners. But it T-Mobile just owns everything. There's a million other T-Mobile stadiums, T-Mobile Arena. There's a bunch of other T-Mobiles out there. Safeco felt unique. Safeco, yeah, it's an insurance company, but like it felt unique to the Mariners. I could make the argument like AT&T Stadium for the Giants was another one. A lot of people just grew up knowing that AT&T Stadium or Pac Bell, before they moved, is now Oracle Stadium. That feels more Golden State Warriors to me. Like Oracle Arena versus Oracle Stadium. So there's some weird ones out there, but I just thought that was an interesting one. Hey, we got some awards coming up this week. Starting tonight, Rookie of the Year award winners are going to be announced. National League Rookie of the Year and American League Rookie of the Year. The nominations are Paul Skeens and Jackson Merrill for NL Rookie of the Year, Colton Cowser of the Orioles, and Austin Wells and Luis Gil of the Yankees for AL. I'd be shocked if Paul Skeens didn't win it for the National League. Like, there was no one that burst onto the scene in the way that he did, especially on a losing team like the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's the face of the Pirates. He's moving the needle in the box office. Like, his numbers were incredible. He's the future ace of that team, probably a future Cy Young winner if he can continue pitching the way he is. Paul Skeens Jackson Merrill is great, but Paul Skeens is that guy. Colton Cowser is also the favorite, but yeah, I don't know. It's just, that's one of those situations where I just couldn't give it to anyone in the Yankees. Luis Gil, Austin Wells, like, what are we doing here? RK in the chat says, I hate everything LA, but I still call it the Staples Center. That's a good one. You're right. That is a good one. I also hate the Intuit Dome. Like, the Intuit Dome feels so corporate to me. I know Staples Center's corporate, that Pepsi Center's corporate, but Intuit just feels so boring to me. But Staples Center, that's a good one. That's a good one.
It's with these places that have history, it's just it was Staples our whole lives with, all those huge Lakers moments. And I hate the Lakers, but yeah, it's just weird to call it anything else.
I know. It is weird. It's just the consistency that you get with all of those. So yeah, Staples Center is a good one. I agree. Hey, we got to wrap up the show by doing having a little conversation about the Hall of Fame ballot, because the Rockies have two former Rockies that are on the Hall of Fame ballot right now, this upcoming 2025 Hall of Fame ballot. Troy Tulowitzki and Carlos Gonzalez. Look, I want to say this now, and we'll probably talk more about this as the week goes on, but I don't see a world in which either of these guys get into the Hall of Fame. I just don't. And people can disagree with me on that. I'm willing to have that conversation with people. I just think there were fallouts of both of these guys' careers, Cargo and Troy, that I think just added a little bit more of a question mark than they would have wanted. If Tulo had stayed healthy his whole career, he would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. I truly believe he would have, but he didn't. He had a lot of injuries. His defense, which was what he was known for, kind of fell off towards the end. Cargo, our guy Merchel, we were talking about before the show, he was saying if someone could get into the Hall of Fame based solely on the sexiness of his swing, it would be Cargo all the way. Him and Ken Griffey Jr. have that category filled, all first ballot. However, besides that, he just didn't have the end to his career that I would have wanted to see. So yeah, RK says Tulo was Hall of Fame talent, but injuries ruined that trajectory. Couldn't agree with you more. If you're having to choose between the two, I'd like to say Tulo has the best chance. I just don't think it's just not gonna happen.
No, they're probably not even going to hit 5%. They probably won't even be on the ballot next year. But cool to see them on this ballot at all. They're all-time Rockies, obviously, huge parts of everybody who is a Rockies fan's lives. And Cargo especially, I love that guy. I'll go to bat for him for the rest of my life.
If there's another Rocky that gets in, it's going to be Nolan Arenado. I know we're a long way away from that. Nolan Arenado was just nominated for a Gold Glove this year. The dude's still playing. But that's probably the next Rocky former Rocky that's going to be nominated. Now, here's the thing. If Nolan Arenado, has more time left in his career, but if he gets nominated for a goal or for a Hall of Fame, does he go in as a Rocky or a Cardinal?
It's probably a Rocky, just because he had way more success here.
And he hasn't even made a playoffs with the Cardinals. So.
Yeah. He won so many Gold Gloves and was an MVP finalist here, so it's probably a Rocky. wherever he goes next, if he wins a World Series somewhere else, it'll probably be that. But I don't see that happening at this point in his career.
Yeah. If you look up Nolan Arenado, his historic photo with his blood, like his peak was in Colorado, at least from a fame standpoint.
The only thing that I could see getting in the way of that is
the Rockies.
The fact that he doesn't have a good relationship with the organization.
That's why
they've got a decade to repair that, probably. So hopefully that can happen.
It could. That's a conversation we can definitely have at a later show. But we got to wrap things up here on the DNVR Rockies podcast. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us in the chat. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the show. Again, previewing ahead on Friday. Huge guest. Current Rockies player going to be joining the show on Friday. That will be announced on Thursday who that guest will be. So be sure to check that out at 12:15 on Friday. That's going to be a great show. I'm also going to be having another good guest on Wednesday, although not a player guest on Wednesday. But going to be a good week of Rockies shows here as we wrap up this week before the holidays. So yeah, appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Shout out to super producer Kale. I'm Christian Saez. You can follow me online at CJJ Saez or on Twitter at DNVR_Rockies. And we'll see you next time. This has been the DNVR Rockies podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.